Justin Wren is a big man, and I don't just mean height. When you meet Justin in person, he takes up space. With his professional athlete's frame and his long blonde hair, you don't just see him, you feel him. He has presence. In his book, Fight for the Forgotten, Justin writes with raw honesty about the intense bullying that shaped his childhood, pain that became fuel, pushing him into the world of professional MMA, where he found money, respect, a sense of belonging, and quite frankly, safety. But along that climb to becoming a champion, he fell into addiction, spiraled into despair, and eventually attempted suicide. And yet, somehow, through all of that, one vision, one verse from Isaiah pulled him toward Africa, toward purpose, toward the people he felt called to help, the forgotten ones. People living in modern day slavery, people drinking water that, as Justin says, we would hesitate to give our dogs. What followed has become a symbiotic story of redemption. Justin, who never had anyone fighting for him as a child, has become a dragon slayer for those forgotten ones. And as he brings them life saving clean water, they bring him something just as life saving: acceptance, belonging, and a deeper understanding of what family truly is. In many ways, they are fighting for each other. This is At the Podium, and I'm Patrick Huey. Today, we're talking about purpose, healing, and the power of being seen with Justin Wren. Hello and welcome to At the Podium with me, Patrick Huey. At the Podium is a multimedia platform where story by story, we explore the resiliency of the human spirit with people who are using their own personal journeys to leave a positive and transformative imprint on our world today. At the Podium holds a space for meaningful conversation, inspiration, and life. Today, I'm thrilled to share the podium with Justin Wren. After battling depression, suicide, and drug addiction, Justin experienced a life-changing journey living with the Mabutu Pygmy people of the Congo Basin rainforest. When he returned to the United States, he founded Fight for the Forgotten to knock out the world water crisis, which today has expanded its impact to serve the Batwa Pygmies of Uganda. Justin, the big pygmy Wren, is a 10-time state champion, 5-time All-American, and 2-time national champion wrestler. He's a UFC veteran and has been inducted into the Black Belt Magazine Hall of Fame. His MMA record is 15-2. As a humanitarian, he's the founder and CEO of the nonprofit Fight for the Forgotten, also authoring a best-selling book with the same name through Simon & Schuster. Justin's transformative storytelling ignites a fire in the human soul that leads to deeper purpose, high performance, and impact. Justin has inspired millions through his appearances on the Joe Rogan Experience. He's done that show 9 times, and TEDx Talks. Today, he is the host of his own inspirational podcast, Overcome with Justin Wren, and he is a globally recognized keynote speaker. Justin, welcome to At the Podium.
Thank you so much. I had the opportunity to meet you in person, give you hugs, and be at ISPA, the National Spa Association, and you crushed it. Everyone there was so amazing. And at the podium, your audience, your listeners, like I'm excited for this one because I get to be with you, and I get to share my story, and this is gonna be a fun podcast.
Thank you. It was such an honor when we were looking at who to bring in to speak to the organization, and your name came up, and Tim Matthew, who works with a lot of speakers and writers, sent your information over, and we watched the video. It electrified the room, what you were talking about and what you were really doing in a way, it's so far from what we do in the spa world, and in many ways, it's so related because if one part of the world isn't well, and literally if they don't have proper drinking water, then how can the rest of us go to sleep at night, knowing that there are a group of people who are literally enslaved, suffering, and dying from preventable diseases, which a lot of your work addresses.
That was one of the most special events in my life, and I was so honored to be there. So, yeah, let's get into this. Thank you
Get
so
into
much.
it. I want to start with you with two quotes. One is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 58, 6 through 12. That in your book, which I got to hold it up again because it's such a great book, but in your book, um, Fight for the Forgotten, you talk about the importance of this set of verses to the work that you were doing and the life transition and transformation you've been in. And what it says is not this the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house when you see the naked, to cover him, and not to hide yourself from your own flesh? Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up speedily. Your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry, and he will say, Here I am. If you take away the yoke from your midst, the pointing of the finger and speaking wickedness, if you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then shall your light rise in the darkness and your gloom be as the noonday. And the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail, and your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. And then you said in a quote, I'm not fighting for myself anymore. I'm fighting for a greater purpose. I'm standing up for the bullied and oppressed and giving a voice to the forgotten. So I look at those two quotes and I said to myself, this is not an expected quote or positioning from a person who spent their career punching and fighting their way to the top. And then after you reach that top, you stepped away from that journey and embraced this idea of repairing the breach and fighting for the underdogs and the forgotten and the oppressed and the bullied. And I want to know how and why that started for you, that transition.
Thank you, Patrick. It was such a great reminder. And I love that you brought that up because I was feeling crazy after I had this basically vision, and I threw it out to the universe, and some cosmic choreography is maybe the best way I could put it. This like vision fell into my lap or all around me, and I actually saw it, and it came true 3 weeks later. It was me in the rainforest, me walking on a footpath here and drumming, singing, came into a clearing, saw this man. We acknowledge each other. We don't have a conversation, but I knew that he was hungry, thirsty, poor, sick, oppressed, enslaved, called someone else master, and felt forgotten. So whenever I came out of that vision, I cried a little puddle of tears. For these people, I didn't know who they were, where they were, anything about them. And I literally questioned my sanity.
Mm.
Am I crazy? Is this a psychotic episode? The reason I bring that vision up is because I didn't know what to do. I wrote the vision down, but I didn't know what to do. And I made basically an inner vow or a promise to myself. I'm never going to tell a human being this because they're going to want to commit me. Something in me, I don't know, it just said, open that Bible. I did. And basically, if you ever go open up with the Bible up halfway, basically that verse is halfway through it. All
Mm.
I did was I went, boom. And I read Isaiah 56, 1 through, it's Isaiah 56, right? Not 58,
Yeah, I'm
56.
sorry, Isaiah 58, 6
Hey,
through
58, 6 through 12. Yeah, Isaiah 58, 6 through 12. I read 1 through 5 and it didn't really ring true at all. When I got to 6 through 12, it
12.
was basically the words in there were hungry, thirsty, poor, impoverished, and sick, and oppressed, and enslaved, and like remove the burdens for people, like remove the burden for people. And I'm like, okay, just all these people that I felt all this stuff where it basically was checking the box through the six things I wrote down. Here's the six things inside this verse and this chapter. And it was mind blowing to me that I was like, okay, maybe something's here.
Yeah.
It took something crazy to get me to leave the life that I was living. And it took something big. Now, it started small. I would backtrack and say it started with a new desire to just make a difference somewhere for someone. And it started at a children's hospital. And I discovered purpose through service. And then things started to snowball, then avalanche. And it was because it was then those experiencing homelessness in Denver. And then it was over 100 different prisons and juvenile detention centers and women's units and death row and Folsom and San Quentin. Like it started to snowball or then avalanche. But when this vision happened, I was like, wait, what? I didn't really have a bucket list, but I don't think something on there would have been maybe go on an African safari. It just wasn't on my radar. I was illiterate to a lot of travel besides for sports, besides for fighting, right? And there's not a lot of wrestling there or jujitsu or MMA. And so when that vision happened and then when it actually happened, came true 3 weeks later with my buddy Caleb, like he's never been back. He's just said, I came to bring you here. And so the stuff that's happened, I've needed that vision to look back on in the really tough times. This is about resilience, right? The podcast, one of the things we talk about. And if I didn't have that vision that's bigger than me, I don't know that I would have continued through some of the struggle and trial and health concerns and wild circumstances. I've been held at gunpoint by rebel groups. I've taken at least 4 women to the hospital after severely being sexually assaulted or raped, right? And there's been some really tough stuff. I've held a 1.5-year-old boy in my hands as he died. And attending funerals for children is something I don't wish on anybody, especially whenever it's 100% preventable. Whenever you know there's a pill for it, when you know there's a shot for it, whenever the pills are $1, whenever the shot's $3, whenever the shovel is $6, or the casket is 30. And it's always happened. So there's that side of it. But why today? Not today. It shouldn't be today.
Mm.
And half the world is so advanced and we take so much for granted. And I'm in that camp, right? Like
Yeah.
we take so much for granted and we have so much to be grateful for. And there's so many people, half of us on earth are literally praying for the things we take for granted. They're praying for it. They're asking for it. They're hoping for it. They're falling to sleep, thinking about it, talking to their family. If we could just have that one thing of the many things on a list that we don't even think about that are at our fingertips. And so it's like, how can we bridge that gap in a sustainable way, in a way that like they can take pride in and be proud of and have dignity because of, and how can they be the change in their own community? And it's possible, like it's happening. I'm seeing it, and so we just got to keep going.
A couple of things that you just said when you were saying that the pill cost $1 and the casket cost $38 to bury the child who's died because they're thirsty. They drank water that was not clean and they had a disease because of that and they die. And one thing that you talk about in the book, you lay out what it costs to bury the child, but because of inter-family wars between different nations within the Congo area, because of the persistent slavery that still exists between the pygmy people and their enslavers, and how they are viewed as not even human, and how they are paid in sometimes goat for jobs they do that take days or weeks to do, that children die because even the cheapness of healing them is against who they're viewed to be in the social status. And they're viewed literally, when you say slaves, they are viewed as slaves. And that was such a profound part of the book for me when you called that out.
Yeah, well, I'm getting chills in a way that like I lived with a community that was currently enslaved for a year, and it's hard to see whenever another human being's coming up to you, talking to you about your friend, saying, "What are you here doing with my property?" And it's like, "Oh, um, excuse me, your what? My property. This is my property. They're my property, or these animals are my property." Like one time I asked, "Why don't you pay them in money? Like it would be less of a burden for you if they got like $1 a day." One, it's really hard, the dynamic there. Like it's not like what we think of slavery, like these big colonial houses and one small family owning hundreds of people, or even 20 people. It's like family owning a family type thing. But they're below the poverty line. Like they're extremely poor too, the people with the power. And so then it's this dynamic of they don't have anything sometimes to give, or definitely to pay, but they have scraps to give people for food. So this is really tough dynamic. Not my last trip, but the trip before when we were doing this land celebration on the Uganda side. So we had this land celebration in my last trip. We had this groundbreaking celebration for the hospital, the school, the community center that just happened. And but some of the government officials were there. And one of the government officials said, "I knew the king, King Nzito of the Batwa Pygmy people." Incredible guy. He said, "Look at this. King Nzito, he's got his own home. They have their own land. There's sustainable farms going on over there. They have water. Like a hospital is going to be coming here, a school, a vocational training facility. Here, fish ponds are in the works." And so it's really cool. Like he's building it up to this moment, I think. But his last words were like, "It's almost like they're human now." And it was just like, whoa, what a mindset. Obviously, it was taught. And it happens all over the world, right? I mean, here there's people with terrible mindsets, but it's this challenge. But as we continue to do the work and they're coming up, like the neighbors see them as like a benefit to the community instead of a burden to the community anymore. And we don't play favorites. So we're not just helping the Batwa Pygmy people, we're helping both sides. So that way they're coming up together, having access to the clean water together, better farming practices together. The barber shop we just opened about a week ago. We're doing hairdressing at the salon, and so people are learning to braid, and the men are learning to use the different tools for fades and other things. It's just cool. I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh man, that's like they're leveling up. And so it's both sides of the community learning that. It's both sides of the community. I don't want to say both. It's the community. We have beekeeping, and we went from 5 hives to this last trip, 20 hives, to now we're planning on 100 different beehives. There's 70 people that are being trained on how to be beekeepers and create their own apiaries and doing it as a community first. And then as they work on that and make money and participate and get the right trainings and skills, they can start it on their own land too. They can work as a collective, like co-op, but then also take it on and become their own business people.
What's amazing to hear you talk about this literal society that you are helping to build and this idea of communal living between people who at once were enemies with each other is that when you look at where you start from the book perspective to where you are today, it's almost unrecognizable.
It is. It really, really is. But I would say a couple of things. We really want to help usher in a new wave of charity, meaning like it's nonprofit NGO sustainable work done right.
Mhm.
And the system's so broken. And now people are doing good work with good intentions, and there's some big behemoths of organizations that they have a quota and all the funds, and they've got to move and go and go and go. But I don't think some of it's as thought out as it possibly could be, because this is what I didn't get to share with you, but there's over 230,000 broken wells in Africa right now. That's billions of wasted charitable dollars.
Right.
Billion. And it's that. It's like I pass because I go off the beaten path. I'm not like hanging out in like the NGO kind of like expat communities where it's by the city and the restaurants and the hotels and stuff. It's like When you actually go out into the forest or into the bush or into places, first off, Fight for the Forgotten's mission is the forgotten places and people, and not just the underserved, the unserved or the not served at all. Most of the time, there are no roads there. And we just completed 13 kilometers of road, right, to get to this community. I think that if it's the traditional show up, blow out technique, announce your arrival with a parade, have a party, get your pictures, and then peace out, you're gone. If it's not locally affordable, locally available, if it's not locally maintained, locally owned and operated, a local initiative, if it's not the people empowering themselves, then it robs them of opportunity. For instance, when I told you I was driving out, I counted. There was more broken wells than operational wells off the roadsides that I was traveling to get there. And if we could actually for a second imagine what that looks like or feels like, it can be demoralizing whenever you finally get clean water, but 12 months later, 18 months later, 10 months later, you know your child had been really sick from drinking the dirty water that you're collecting. You're walking for hours. And it's water that, for our perspective, we would have a hard time putting that water in a dog bowl. It's really hard for these moms and dads almost to get up. Like they need it, so they walk to the dirty water source. But on the way back, or even on the way there, like they've told me, like, we know that's going to make us sick, but we have no other option. We know that could take my child's life, but we have no other option. And so to get the resource, to only lose it again, and to have no one in the community that has the knowledge of how to fix it, or the tools to fix it, or it's too expensive to fix, or the parts aren't locally available because you have to ship them in from overseas. It's like, whoa, what are we doing? There's got to be a better way. There already is a better way. And how do we help one community at a time get the access to the resources they need? Land rights, water to drink, clean, safe drinking water, food to eat, better housing, healthcare when their kids are sick or having a safe birth, education. So most parents, they want their children to have a good education, and just like here, right? Like we want them to have opportunities we never had. Then after that, sustainable livelihoods, because the parents themselves want a job, a better job, or some kind of consistent way of making sure food's on the table, buying school uniforms, paying for books, or whatever they need, buying the medication when they're sick of malaria because they're no longer sick of water related illnesses.
Yeah. I think for people listening who have not read the book or know the story, you had a tough childhood growing up, which we will talk about, but through a series of interventions and people stepping into your life, you were able to really build this amazing career within the professional wrestling world and MMA. And that led you to a reality TV situation, a drug problem, a suicide attempt. And then you ended up finding your way almost through a divine intervention that led you to the Mabutu Pygmy people in Africa. And the work that you started doing there was to help them have clean water and to build water wells, which is a whole journey of learning for them and for you in the book. And so this charity work and the water images are really tied to the real work that you started doing there, which is expanding past that, but that idea of bringing clean water to people. And you, as you said, you weren't going to like Nigeria with the cool cities and like the great restaurants and the fashion shows and all of that. In Lagos, you were trekking for miles and miles and miles through dense bush with rainforest and bugs to get to people who did not always welcome you with open arms, to sleep in the huts with them for a year at a time to learn them. So you left this whole life that had been built out of your own journey to help these people get clean water. So when you say that there are still broken wells that once worked, that is not just theory. It's the work that you've been actually doing to help overcome that situation.
Honestly, it's personal to me
Yeah.
because when I say personal, like it's on my heart, but it's also offensive because for the first 6 months of me being there and drilling wells, we failed. And I know what that feels like to let down an entire community with the hope of clean water and not being able to deliver. until later, much later. So yeah, I think for me, what I would say is the vision I had also paired with their vision, because this started with like a stick in the dirt and um and a chief, Leo May and Jay Loa, and the chiefs and elders and the wives like saying what they needed or desired, and them, drawing a circle. If we could have land, and then inside that circle, like
Yeah.
water right there and a farm over here. And uh so I think us as an organization, we've tried to be different because it started differently, but it's also been, let's ask great questions, but let's ask good questions, and they'll have great suggestions, because it's not my country, culture, necessarily community. I didn't grow up here. And so I could have the right intentions in my heart, but if it's poor follow through by coming in with a cookie cutter solution, some all in one blueprint that's going to address poverty in this new place, I have it in the Western world. So this is what we did. You should do it too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's like, wait. Is it culturally sound? Do they want that? Like if you come in with just a bunch of goats and you give it to the pygmy people, the Mabuti, the Efe, or the Batwa, only half of the Batwa in Uganda would actually eat a goat. Half of them have a spiritual belief that is goats host evil spirits, and so we don't eat them. And so, you know, they, you could come drop off 1,000 goats and say, "Hey, you're goat herders now. Now you have meat and you have milk," and they're not going to use them.
Right.
They would sell them, which would help them for a minute, but now they're not rearing them and raising more. That's a weird example, but it's a true example.
But it's yeah, you think you're solving a problem, but you're just creating a more complex situation for the people that you're trying to help.
Right. In Congo, their goal there was to have houses like their neighbors,
Mm.
like their former masters, right? And so we helped them level up from grass and leaf and twig huts that were in the shape of domes to squared homes with mud walls, but bamboo in between it and this reinforcement. But they wanted no iron sheets. We put a few iron sheets on the first ones. And whenever they had iron sheets like their neighbors and it started to rain, they hated it inside because of how loud it was.
Yeah.
So they went back to the leaves on the top of the roof. But if we just came in there and not listened and just did it all, and say, here you go, like I literally think people would have left and went back to the traditional huts. But in Uganda, they wanted better um, housing with this foundation, and they wanted to be part of building it themselves and learn from the masons and lay the bricks. And they did want iron sheets, and they wanted to even pre-plan for whenever they can buy solar and put the wires inside and have the battery. And it was just like, okay, y'all are really thinking this out. Like they
Uh,
led the mix, they led the charge.
it's so interesting. And we were talking about this earlier that when you start to solve for one problem, you have to solve for many problems. When you're going in to work with people, you just use the word mission. You can't just, you have to have the ability to see past maybe what the initial thought was and really address what the need is when you're going in trying to support people.
And the need that they identify as the number one need. So we are getting ready to start this new one, and we had a community meeting, and the office that day, or the conference room, was like under the big shade tree, but hundreds of people were there, and we were able to them to lead it and us to listen and us to ask questions and them to ask questions and give suggestions. But it was the first thing before we started on the health center, which we thought that was their number one need. They're like, we would like another access road that would help us get down to the neighboring community that has a market so that they can be selling and making money. But let's get this road first that will also help be a shortcut that would get the materials here faster. Their desires were different, but also they're like, let's start with the community center. Because if we start with the community center, that can be a medical outpost first, and we won't have to wait as long for the health center to be built and the doors to be open and it to be staffed with a doctor, nurse, and lab techs. Like we could have a nurse stationed at the community center. So that's what we started with first. It was their idea. It was like, yeah, actually, that's brilliant. Let's partner with the local government officials or health officials and bring in a nurse to be here at least 3 to 5 days a week. And so that's where we started, right? But if we just came in with this big we do have a 158-page document of the master plan, and it's all detailed, and engineers are working on it, architects, and all this stuff. But it's like, what do they want first?
One thing that I think we should say, because it's so evident in the book, that you're going there to help people. And for you, this is not just here's my Gantt chart and here's the architectural renderings and here's the 5-year plan. You really invested in this community and you call them family. And what I love about the book is that you expand out what the word family means and you really open up yourself and your heart to these really profound relationships with people that you refer to as your cousins and your mother and your father. And that opened them up to you because you opened yourself up to them and were able to have those deep kind of relationships with them. And I loved how in the book you really reframed this idea and this word of family and who is that person that is your neighbor and your family. And if you kind of tie it back to the verse in Isaiah, the chapter in Isaiah, they're basically saying anyone who is without food or clothing or water is your opportunity to loose the bonds of wickedness and help them.
Mm.
So I think that's really impactful to the point of people go in and just do things that they want to do and they don't really know the people who are there. And you're like, no, this is actually, I'm taking care of them as if they were my DNA blood family.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. When I'm home here in the US, I'm so homesick for there. And I never experienced that when I'm there until I got engaged. Until I got engaged.
Yes.
But 13 years it's been homesick for there. I don't know if this is in the book, but whenever I first got there, it was nicknames like the vanilla gorilla, the albino rhino, like the big guy and stuff. But as time has progressed, my names have become the man who loves us, the big pygmy. We're one, we're not different. And also, Olengama is a new name, but it came recently and it was from King Nzito. His father's name was Olengama,
Wow.
and they named the land Olengama, and they painted me with his ashes and dirt from his father's grave and ashes from the fire. And they did it on my forehead, my nose, my face, my lips, my chest. And it was just me and the three other elders. And we stayed up all night talking, laughing, dancing. It was their ceremony of like adopting me in among the Batwa in Uganda. That I already had that in Congo with the Mabuti, but also I'm one of them too. And what's interesting is the work from Congo to Uganda is vastly different, similar, but vastly different. It's hard to invest in infrastructure in Congo when there's warring rebel groups and it can be overtaken or destroyed or
Mm.
different things like that. But we can do land, water, and farming there because that's like lower risk investment, right?
I'm going back to the ceremony with the ashes, and I'm wondering, what does that internally feel like to have that level of trust
Hmm.
that they take their parents' ashes and make this part of a ceremony to birth you into their community? What is that like?
Well, I didn't know it was going to happen, and I don't think they did either. They did ask me if I would go down to his father's grave, and I said yes. And I know that at least most of their traditions, if they visit someone's grave, which I mean, it depends because in Congo, if they can still be nomadic and move, if someone dies, they normally will put the body in a hole of a tree or in the roots of a tree and move. The whole community moves to a different place. Or sometimes they burn the body. Most of the time, it's not a in the ground burial um, unless it depends on where you are. So in Uganda, we went down there, but I know that anytime they come across those trees or where the people are, they'll bring a meat offering. It's almost like leaving roses on a tombstone or leaving flowers. So I brought some meat with me. It was basically nice beef jerky wrapped up and brought it down and we left it there. And then I saw him scooping up the dirt from the grave and stuff, and I had no clue what he was doing. But we came back, but he had this moment where he just was kind of like looking at me, studying at me whenever I was leaving the meat on his father's grave. So when we got back, we went to the grave and we brought back materials to teach the children, hey, we have these nicer homes now, but this is the way we used to live in the forest, which was so they built the twig and leaf dome huts. And so I helped build them. And they were pretty surprised I was like able to participate, know what to do a little bit. Not perfectly, but I could participate and contribute. Then everyone kind of went back to the homes we had built. Well, I went and grabbed my backpack and a sheet and a small little pillow, and I started making my bed inside of the hut, the dome hut, and that they had just built basically for like an example. And Zito looks at me and goes, "Are you thinking about sleeping in there tonight?" And like through translation, and he speaks some English. I'm like, "Yeah, of course." What do you mean? We put all this effort into it and we are just down at your father's grave. Like, yeah, I miss sleeping in these. And he goes, it was like light bulb moment. So he went up and grabbed a small sheet for himself and he came in with me. We had built three of these. So him and I were roommates that night in the huts. Two of the other elders and another one in the other. And so then we were sitting around the fire and they started singing some songs from Congo, actually. Well, they went into the first song and I was able to, I knew it. I knew the words. And so I came in with them. And so then they were like, "What?" And they started a second. I knew it. And they started a third and I knew it. And I was like, so after that, he went back up to his home, grabbed the dirt and the ashes and came back to the fire. And it was a special moment. Like I can't say he, he had tears in his eyes first and he just put his hands on my head after they painted me. He prayed for traveling mercies. He asked that the work here would continue. It's this moment because what was unique in Uganda is it's different. Like they've been systematically discriminated against and used, exploited by even nonprofits, but also government officials. In Uganda, none of the Batwa Pygmy people are allowed in the rainforest. They've been taken away from their ancestral home that they've lived in for minimum of 60,000 years, probably 75,000 years, maybe 100,000. So in the name of sustainability, the most sustainable people have been kicked out. They said that night, we're the one organization that keeps coming back. Other organizations have come in and they feel like a human safari. People take their pictures, they ask to dance for them, and then they leave. And we just keep coming back. So it was this moment of like him and me, where if there were, I don't think over the last 3 to 5 years there were any questions there, but it was like a verbal acknowledgement of like, you're with us, you're one of us. And it was to get the name of his father, like that blew me away. I was like, what?
Yeah.
So he said in that little ceremony, he said, this is what my father would have wanted here is us to have land and water and food,
Mm.
healthcare and all that. So if we can't be in our home, the forest, he'd want this to
And
happen.
move there. It's so interesting to hear this level of just adoption of you by the people there. And then I juxtapose that with, I would say, almost maniacal bullying that you experienced, that you talk about in the book. And as you're talking about them sort of adorning you with the ashes, I think about you putting together this, adorning yourself with this boxes of Dr. Pepper with tape because this girl that you liked, who is such a villain, I shouldn't say that, but she's such a villain in the book, but she does. But what they do to you in the book at her sort of instigation, that's just so humiliating that you have that experience in your life. Now you have this other experience of adorning.
Hmm.
And I think that's the part when I read the book, I started to understand a little bit more. But it's also just shocking what you had to sort of go through and come out on the other side of that, and how that was kind of the pathway that led you into the fighting world that would be your way out of being in a place where a person could humiliate you like that.
Yeah. You know, I had this interesting conversation with Amy, who you met, my fiance, and she was like genuinely asking if I would change anything. And like, if you could have not gone through that, would you not have? And other things. And on the surface, yeah, of course, I wouldn't have wanted to been bullied or been the laughing stock of the school or had these really hurtful moments where the three people are basically like, you're worthless. Uh, you're not good enough and you should just kill yourself. To where, for more than a decade of my life, wondering that it became my own self-talk and becoming that fighter was to fight my way out of bullying, like you said, and I had successfully done it. But if I wouldn't have done that or been through that and narrowly survived at times by my own hand, I don't think I would have the compassionate heart and the confidence. I'm not saying I can't be bullied anymore, but after being a national champion in wrestling and a UFC fighter and a black belt Hall of Fame, like I can walk into rooms and know that no one's going to bully me now. And I also know that I can do something and I'm not just meaning like physically, like fight. Um, it built up this confidence in me whenever a governmental official says it's almost like they're human now. I'm like, hey man, come here. Let's have a talk. And he has more power than I do in that nation, and he could get me arrested or he could kick me out or whatever. But it's like, hey, genuinely, let's just have a heart to heart, like a conversation of mind and heart. Where'd this come from? And having the confidence to like stand up to it because I would have wanted someone to have done that for me in those moments as a child. Then in comparison, nothing I had been through is Patrick, the old land that the Batwa and Uganda lived on, it was behind a slum. And in that slum, there was a bar and there was like a disco and some music. And now you're taking these people that have this ancient wisdom from the herbal medicines and hunter gatherers and this beautiful way of life, taking them from that, ripping them out of them and putting them behind a slum with a bar, big music, loud at night, to where people come out and hurl insults at them. The women would tell me that people would tell them they stink, they smell like an animal, they look like a monkey, they all this stuff. And their doors, their doors there were rice bags or fabric, right? To where people can walk in and do whatever they want to them.
Mm.
And they and did. And so the change now is like once we heard that was happening there and saw it happening and saw in their eyes, it's like, oh, we got to get them out of this land into somewhere safer. How can we work with them, the government officials, their oppressors, like to literally remove them from this situation, just like my parents did for me. When they finally found out how bad it was at the school I was in, and they saw that I wanted to do something else with my life, like they removed me from that school and got me somewhere better. It's hard to do that with hundreds of people, but it's like, okay, let's search for land. Let's look for, you know what the Nzito calls that land? They know no American history, none, but they call it their land of opportunity. So the celebration of getting them there and them hearing it or that, us hearing them call it that, this is our land of opportunity. It's like, wait, where'd you hear that? That's what it is. This is.
One thing that comes up in the book, and as we're talking, it came back to me, is this series of men from the coach who you went to work with to the different elders of these different communities who you say God put in your path to lead you to where you were, to even the person who you told the dream to, who was like, oh, I know exactly who those people are. And I think there's something really beautiful in the book that there is like this community of men around you who support you and whom you support. And I just kept thinking this is a really good example of what it's like when men from different cultures, different backgrounds, different religious beliefs support one another. Look at what the output could be from that level of engagement that men can have together and not fear each other.
I love that because look, I used to have an idea of what manhood was, and it was I needed to be an MMA fighter. And now I realize, like, for me, it was part of it, but it's only one part. It's only one spoke in the wheel. I've had really balanced perspectives of men who are incredibly compassionate and willing to cry. Now, that wasn't what I had in childhood. That wasn't what I had in early adulthood, but it's what I've had since. I think from all the travels and all the different unique heroes of my story, we must be more balanced, right? We'll have our strong suits, But boy, it was killing me inside, thinking I had to pretend to be tough and had to do it by myself. And when I get knocked down, I have to find a way to get up on myself. Like one of the strongest things I've ever done in my life was not winning a cage fight. It was at rock bottom asking for help. In my mind, I thought it was a sign of weakness. But I
Mm,
look back at that moment and the people who came to basically my aid and were active in my own rescue, it's like, boy, I'm so grateful for them. So to have men that are willing to show up, or men, women, people that are willing to show up for me, like it literally saved my life at times and has made my life so much better. And so, sorry to cuss, but hell yeah, I want to do that for others. And I want to be fully present and like what you led the podcast with. I want to hold space for people in their good times, their challenging times, their hard times. When we do that for others, like it expands our cup, right? And
mm,
I also know that through water and other things, like people say, I have a cup of water right here. They're like, you can't pour out what you don't have. And I agree, and we can get empty at times and we need to fill back up. But I also think there's this greater source that oftentimes we're not tapping into. And this is a good reminder for me today. If we just stay connected to that source, I feel like source, creator, God's love, it's a mighty effing river. It's a mighty river. And if we can just stay connected to that thing, that source of love, then that continues to flow in and flow out and it doesn't have to empty.
mm. You speak eloquently about yourself as a Christian, which I really, really like. You say in the book, you say, I can tell you what becoming a Christian is not. It isn't following a religious checklist or annual checklist of rules to do or not to do. I believe being a Christian is receiving God's grace and love in our life through relationship with Jesus. When we give our hearts, minds, and souls over to being changed, we can discover God's best plan for our life, the life we are meant to live. Being a Christian doesn't mean personal perfection, doesn't mean a perfect life. It isn't boring. And it doesn't mean giving in or giving up to a hypocritical or man-made religion. You talk about this idea that love is needed in every nook of the world. And I kind of really love that perspective of Christianity because I feel like we live in a time when, you know, Christianity is being so morphed into different things that it maybe wasn't meant to be a part of. And I think you sort of distilled it down to a very clear thing, which is just like it's a lot about love and being okay with your imperfections and moving forward.
Yeah. For me, it's very personal. And also, I find church in the forest, not between four walls. And the pygmy people say God gave us the forest. And I love that. And so that's why I want to help protect that for them. So when I go to that, I think for me, what it means is someone who tries to put love and compassion in action, regardless of where they align, or, uh, it's not this polarizing political thing. That's what it's been, if I can say, bastardized into.
Yeah.
I think that it should be a uniting force, not a dividing force.
I look at your life and the breadth of all that you've done and the different incarnations you have existed within. Not many people go from being a reality TV star, MMA fighter, to building water wells in the Congo and everything in between that happened. And I wonder
Yeah.
what for you feels like, what is this legacy or impact that you feel that you are creating, not even leaving, but what you're creating?
If I boiled it down, I'm just a dude that wants to put love and compassion in action in sustainable ways. But I think as an organization, Fight for the Forgotten, we know, we've seen, we've discovered, and we want to scale, grow, and replicate a better way, a more meaningful way, a lasting, transformative way that we hope others will see and take inspiration from. And we want to not just scale it and grow it, but we know that it's going to impact more lives. And we want to open source it so people can see our failures, our challenges, our successes, and learn from it, see if they can take it back to their community. but also if other NGOs want to do it, they can do it too. And or other government people and whoever, right? Like, here's a way to make sure people have food in their bellies, clean water to drink, a warm house to sleep in, medicine when they're sick, and birthing mothers have a safe place to do it. They can have a better job to put some money in their wallet or food on the table and send their kids to school. So I hope that's the legacy. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg, though, and I'm excited for that. It's only just begun.
Justin, thank you so much for your time and for your story and what you're doing. It's powerful. It's powerful.
Thank you. I can't tell you how grateful I am for you, your heart. You're sharp. You're, of course, your mind, but just thank you, man. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you to who you are, because I was so excited for this. I'm so glad it finally happened. And let's get together in person.
We will. We'll work it out for sure.
And yeah,
All right. To those of you who are watching or listening, remember, we all have a voice. We all will leave a legacy. Live and choose wisely. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Justin.